Hey, what's up, guys? Can anyone hear me? Hold on, I can't hear anybody. Hold on.
Uh, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Nick, can you? You might be muted.
It doesn't seem to be muted.
Huh.
Hey, give me while he figures out, give me a second. I'll be back in just a few 3 or 4 minutes.
All right. Um. Yeah, it doesn't show you as muted, Nick. So is it on your mic? Maybe it's muted on your mic, or maybe you have a different mic set up, or I'm not sure. Like it's your settings is on a different mic. Try it on. Are you on a USB mic? You're on your laptop mic. Hold on. You see over to the right hand of your screen, it says private chat. Click on private chat and you can type right there and tell me what's going on.
Uh, all right, this is Penguin. I still can't hear you. I'm trying to see what's happening with Seth because I was actually away. Let's see.
How about now? Does this work? Can you guys hear anything now?
Yeah, I hear you now.
All right.
That was it. Whatever it was, that was it. Perfect.
I went into the settings of the actual program there.
Okay.
And it
Okay.
had a different setting than the desktop. Weird.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah. I think it was our guest. I think actually I thought we got that, but he just fixed it right when you joined.
Yeah. Sorry, I never used this before, so I don't.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
no
okay.
worries.
We got
Exactly,
it.
exactly. Yeah, I have problems. They'll just change something, and then all of a sudden it'll throw the entire podcast off. So not this program, but other ones we've used. So welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, no problem, man. Thanks for having me on.
I'm pulling up your email now, and then we can get rolling.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't send that earlier.
Well, no worries.
Too busy.
Hey, how do you say your last name?
Pazuzu.
Well, okay. Do you want to be introduced as Pazuzu or Sagius?
Yeah, Sages is fine. Sages, there's an older way with it too, but that's the way I use it, more North Americanized.
Okay.
Crazy Greek name. What can you do? I don't know. I didn't pick it.
Right. All right. Well, Penguin, you ready to roll? Are we? Yeah, we're streaming. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead and do the intro,
Yeah,
and then I'll introduce him.
All right. All right. Welcome back to the Agora Podcast. It's your home for algorithm, localism, radical decentralization, and anti-authoritarian concepts. As usual, it's Penguin here, your host with my co-host Sek Agora. Sek, how's it going today?
It's going, man. Hustled, getting some work done so I could get home for this. So.
Same.
Yeah.
Riding a motorcycle home, and finally actually getting comfortable with it. So I got to kind of ride in a little bit of hurry, and it was going pretty well. Weather's getting better for it.
Yeah, it's probably still cold in the morning for a bike, but
this morning it was really not happy about this morning and tomorrow morning. But it's weather's been really unseasonably warm. So good news for our business.
Yeah, for real. Well, today we're doing something a little bit different. As most of the audience might know, I'm a bit of a metalhead. So today we're bringing on Nick Pazuzu. He is I met him on Twitter. I've been liking a lot of his posts. He's from a band called Tribe of Pazuzu, and he was formerly in Soulstorm, Overthrow, and Pestilence, which I'm a huge fan of, and currently also in Nihilist Death Cult. So I'm going to keep it short there, and I'll let Nick kind of introduce himself. But Nick, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on the show.
So tell us a little bit about you. Like, what, how long have you been a metalhead?
I guess, does rock music count? I guess it kind of leads into metal usually. 8, 9 years old, I remember listening to the radio and AC/DC, Pink Floyd, Rush, and then, it wasn't on the radio at that time, I guess, like Iron Maiden and stuff, but that was the next level of getting into heavier music. So like, 81, 82, getting into more metal stuff like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and then later like Exciter, Razor, but a little heavier stuff, local, too. And just that kind of transition going heavier and heavier. And then, you know, just, I guess I was there too, like when it all happened, like, you know, thrash and death metal, all the inceptions, right? So it was fun following all that stuff too as it was coming out, you know, just getting heavier and heavier.
How long were you with Pestilence? Like, what years were that?
I tried out at the end of 1990. I was in the band. So 91, basically, I went over there. It didn't last too long. The whole thing was maybe like 5-6 months, like, you know, with just everything that happened. And we were in, because they were about to go to the studio, and that's where I came in, and I just learned the songs, and we were about to go to record at Morristown in Florida, which I already had done previously with my previous band, Overthrow. And so I already knew Scott and all those guys, but it didn't work out with the Pestilence thing. It was just like they were changing their style. I was not into the style that they were changing into. So, you know, I like the first two albums, and, you know, I was looking for more of a Consuming Impulse kind of vibe. And
Yeah.
so it just changed for me. And I just was like, I wanted to do something else at that time. And also I was kind of stepping back because I was like a main writer before that, and joining a band already established, already songs are written. I kind of had to do my thing too. So that's I knew that wasn't going to work out in the future as well.
So Tribe of Pazuzu, you guys formed in 2018. What was why'd you form that band as opposed to sticking with your other band? It's just something different, or?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy different styles there. Like Soulstorm was just more just like doom, industrial influenced, kind of like nihilistic, you know, just slow and crushing, and which is still a lot of the same adjectives I like to use for Tribe, but in a different respect, you know, because it's a little it's more relentless, it's organic now, like it's more straightforward death metal. You know, it's got some thrash influences in there. It's got some black metal influences in there. Just almost as opposite as you could get from Soulstorm, but I mean, like not from the heavy aspect of it, but stylistically. So it's just something I wanted to. I never really got to do that as much as I wanted to in the past, because once I did Soulstorm, I kind of just did that, you know. So now I'm happy to be getting right back into it and just you know, developing that style.
Yeah, man, I got to tell you, I've been digging into it a little bit, listening into some of your new stuff from Tribe of Pazuzu, and I'm really liking it. It's you know, it's a good death metal album, but it's not. There's something a little bit different about it. I think you're right. There is some thrashiness to it, you know.
Right.
So it's not just like every other death metal album I've heard. You know, it's something a little different. I like the vocals. Your vocals are really good.
Appreciate all that.
No, I'm really digging it. I really like it a lot. So I'm happy to be turned on to that, you know.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate all the kind words there. You know, like I guess it is different. It's my spin on it, right? I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm not trying to do something like, you know, that's so. I mean, I think within the framework of death metal, you can still be original. Yeah. And, you know, like people say stuff like, oh, it's all been done before and this and that. But it's just like, I don't think that's a really creative approach, because you can still do things within the same framework and just give it a different spin and a different, like, no two bands are going to sound the same or have the same ideas throughout their careers and just, you know, moving on. So I think it's just something that I just, you know, developed and just I've been working on it a little bit more and just trying to focus on keeping this relentless style up instead of being bogged down with ideas of trying to be commercial or trying to nice it up or, you know, having long, slow parts and stuff like that. I really kind of just shed the fat on this one and just trimmed everything. It was just like, this is, you know, it's very focused and, you know, like they're all tight bombs of fire I'm trying to drop, you know.
Cranked it up to 11, right?
Yeah. It's like there's no apologies, there's no compromise to it. You know what I mean? It's a very just like relentless approach to it, and I feel that's missing in a lot of things, because some people do let's do a slower song. Let's put this out as a single. Like, I mean, even the single approach that of course we've done that because we have like, PR wants to do that kind of stuff. And it's still out of my ballpark of what that is, but I mean, it's calling it a single, for example, it has different connotations, from like a more of a pop kind of world, I guess, really. Whereas, death metal doesn't look at it that way. We don't have singles and stuff like that, right? I mean, it's just like an album, and the whole thing is pretty focused. So it is what you get from start to finish,
This most recent album that I've been listening to from you guys, it seems like there's a lot of apocalyptic themes. Does that come across? Am I right? Am I reading that right? Like World War. He seems to be worried about World War III, something like that.
I'm not really worried about anything personally, but that's where the nihilistic aspect of it comes in. But I think it was just death and destruction. It just goes hand in hand with this kind of style and approach to music, and that's where I was saying, like, it doesn't have to always be repetitive. The same idea of death and destruction. I think you could work it out into new ideas of like how you could be destroyed and die. You know what I mean? So there's this there's a lot of like darker figures and evil that's going on in the album too, which is like the human behaviors or just like things that very individual based for some reason, like the figures throughout history. Like that's something I touched on with like each of the songs, which was something different that I haven't really done before.
Very cool. So you guys touring right now, or?
I would love to tour at any point in time. I'm ready to go. Having a band with these kind of members in it, like, I mean, I kind of painted myself into a corner having, busy guys, professional musicians, all doing other things. So it's just trying to get everybody on the same page, but it's definitely something that we're planning on doing this summer. I'm hoping it happens. Let's pray for it.
So one thing I've been trying to explain or wrap my own head around in regards to metal, you can't really necessarily, because not all of our audience is metalheads, right? So trying to explain this to like non-metalheads is there's a certain camaraderie or like almost brotherhood amongst metalheads that doesn't seem to exist in other forms of music. So like what I mean is, it doesn't matter like, what color you are, where you're from, who you are, what your background is. If you got a Slayer shirt, and somebody else, some other metalhead sees you, they're going to yell Slayer, and it doesn't matter. You're brothers in the sense that you're both like metalheads. And like I remember the first time when I was like I must have been like 14, and Hatebreed was kind of local to me where I grew up, and I was at a Hatebreed show, and I was at some like banquet hall or something like that, and I was in the pit, and I was getting my ass handed to me, and I got knocked down, and Jamie Josta stopped the song and told everybody around me to pick me up, and they did. I mean, huge dudes, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like I was in a pit with a bunch of like grown ass men,
Right.
So they lift me up. They, gave me a sip of beer or whatever. So it's like you'll be in a pit, and some dude will be, you'll be kicking each other's ass and whatnot and throwing elbows. But if somebody you get knocked down, somebody's gonna like lift you up,
yeah, for sure,
and give you a hug and share their beer with you. You know what I mean? Like there's that brotherhood, like almost like you're going into war. It's that doesn't exist in other forms of music. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you see if Lady Gaga fans, like scream at each other when they see each other or whatever, like they do, like the Slayer fans, right? But yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember that from like, I mean, I wasn't. So like I was going to shows around 16, 17. So I was like, not a big guy in the pit, like, but I remember all that stuff too, like DRI and seeing all these bands and like people just like, that was when it was like a circle pit back then too, as well. So it wasn't like just a free for all violent pit either. It was just like, kind of like whatever the dance was, like a circle pit going around and they were helping you out and people weren't like, like there wasn't punching going on and stuff like that. And, But yeah, I mean, it's very like the thing about metal is that it's the style is like ugly and obnoxious a little bit, you know. I mean, to normal people for sure, you know. And it's always been about the underdogs and the outsiders, and you know, it's never been discriminating, like you said, like because we are like the freaks of what's going on, like in society, I guess, right? Like, I mean, we don't look at it that way, but that's how we're viewed. And I think, you know, and then also, like, I think some people do overcompensate with that, but I mean, it's it just kind of is what it is. Like, it is a brotherhood or not or camaraderie, I guess you would say, you know, because there it is hard to find other people into this kind of style. So when you see it at a shows, when you congregate at those places, it's a you know it's a special feeling. I think you're feeding off the energy of the crowd too, the band and playing, and it's just it's a good vibe. I think.
Yeah, it was it's like nothing else, you know. I that's what I think I enjoy most about metal. You know, aside from just loving the music, but just the live shows are just it's something else entirely, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Um I remember when I was about, 12 or 13, just to kind of give you a backstory here is I guess I was already kind of into, some Pantera and some White Zombie at that time. This would have been in like the mid to late 90s or so. And I think I'd heard Slayer and maybe Metallica and Megadeth and stuff. But then I was over at a friend's house and his older brother, we were smoking pot and he puts on Cannibal Corpse. And I heard the album The Bleeding for the first time.
Right.
And it was, I mean, for a young dude, it was nothing I'd ever heard in my life. I was immediately in love, and every day since that I've loved metal and death metal and all kinds of stuff. So it's it's unlike it brings something out in your soul that you've I'd never experienced before that.
Right.
And people will say, oh, it's angry music, it'll make you angry, and it's like I've tried to explain to somebody like if I'm upset, I'm going to put some metal on, and it's almost like a primal release in some sense, where
Okay. Yeah. Very.
I'm much calmer after listening to it, almost. But
Yeah, I think it's a cathartic experience, and it's not only from the listener point of view, but also when you're writing it and playing it. I mean, I feel that when we rehearse and stuff like that, you know, like sometimes you know everything's just clicking and you have like a out of body experience, you know, like you're just very like you know just things that happen and just leave these vibrations, and it's a trip, man. You know, it's happened live too to me as well, and you know, just like when you feed the audience too, everything is just clicking, and it's surreal, you know, to feel that kind of stuff. Like of course I'm taking it to a whole different level, but it does you know, I mean, just blasting the music in the car, it always has to be loud, and it's you know this kind of music, and I just I feel the same way. I mean, you know, might drive a little bit faster during that event. That might be one of the only drawbacks of listening to it loud, but yeah, definitely it's a cathartic experience, I believe, for sure.
yeah, for real. Um, oh, so the reason you and I started talking is I started seeing some of the posts that were sort of non-music related or sort of I don't know, critiques of society or politics. Like
Sure.
what is we're Penguin and I are anarchists, but um, what is the politics like, and how much do you think that influences your music or your writing? If you have politics, I mean, what are your beliefs about the world? What do you think about things? And then
And like, I mean, I do kind of like tend to be like, I'm not religious at all. Don't really have any political affiliations. I don't, there's, like definitely non-religious for sure. No religions. I don't, I mean, but then when I say all religions are bad, some people are like, oh, what about Buddhism? You know, like, and I'm like, well, no one's ever really had a problem with Buddhism. I mean, like, that's not a, you know, problematic type of thing situation, you know, like whereas other ones there's very like the stricter religions is what, you know, I mean, to me it's just like why are they strict? I don't even know like who's paying attention to what, like what's going on. Are we going to be let in somewhere later? I don't know. I don't believe in any of that stuff. So I don't know. I don't even know what your podcast is about. So I don't, maybe it is very religious, but you say you're anarchist and stuff. So I'm just I don't know. So I'm just trying to say.
No, I'm an atheist penguin here. He's a practicing Muslim, but no, it's I agree with you on the religion mostly, but
Right. And of
um,
course, I have the experience of just my religion, like which I was growing up raised Greek Orthodox, and I mean, just even stuff like you can't eat meat on Fridays or fasting altogether. It's just like, why am I not eating the food that I want to eat? Like, I don't understand. Like, it's you go to hell if you eat a hot dog on a Friday or something like that. I mean, like, really, this stuff doesn't make sense to me. Um, what do I believe in? I don't know. I don't know. Just like, but I find certain things serious, like that most people don't like when I do critique certain things, like even just like the death metal scene or the black metal scene or whatever. Like, as it's like kind of like joking about it as well, but it's also like, well, what has it become? Like, you know what I mean? I don't really know what's uh like black metal. I think that's the recent thing I said. Like, there's some tours going on right now, and there's like they're all calling it black metal, and I'm just like, what part of that is black metal? Really, I don't understand. Uh, like the Rotting Christ tour, for example, all those bands on that. Like, I know a lot of people like those bands. I'm just trying to figure out what it has to do with black metal at this point.
yeah, you might say they're, speaking specifically to Rotting Christ, it's almost like blackened death. Like there is a little bit of a black influence in that, but I wouldn't call it like straight up
Oh,
black metal. Yeah,
yeah, definitely. There's some black influence in all those bands, but
right.
to call them black metal is just like I'm not hearing it really. I don't, that's just me
Right.
though. But I've never been a huge black metal fan. It's more death metal has always been more my thing. Uh,
Black metal is pretty hit or miss. I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan of the genre, but there's definitely bands that I am a fan of. Like I'm
yeah,
a huge Dark Throne fan, and I love some old Bathory and Celtic Frost and stuff.
sure.
But um,
Is Celtic Frost black metal?
they're considered that, but to me, even like the first wave of black metal just sounds like thrash. It sounds like toned
Yeah,
down thrash, or a crossover, almost.
sure. Because I know
Um,
as people say Venom too and stuff because they have the song black metal, but I mean, I don't think anything about them was black metal, but
Yeah, that's what they call like first wave black metal. So it's almost like proto black metal in a sense, like it
understand.
is really, really like just straight up old school thrash, but it was sort of a transition, I would say, between like old school thrash and like black metal. It's somewhere in the middle, but
Yeah, okay.
yeah,
Like,
but that's what they call first. That's what is commonly referred to as like first wave black metal. But I've always said this just sounds like thrash metal about Satan, basically.
yeah, yeah.
Right. It's still good, but it's
Like even
very, very different than some of the black metal that comes later.
like even saying this is going to be another controversial one to some people, like calling Possessed one of the first death metal bands, and it's just like I never really saw them as death metal, but it's more death metal than anything else, that's for sure. Then it definitely had a lot of the foundations of what became death metal, not only lyrically and visually, like the way they were on stage, like and what they wore on stage with the studs and the leather and everything, but the lyrics too, and just the relentless style was always fast, that kind of thing. Where, I guess the blast beats came in later with stuff like Morbid Angel for sure, and that was awesome. I love that
Yeah,
too.
it's hard to ever say like what's the first, because it's a constant sort of
Well,
transition, and constantly evolving.
and then when you look at the timelines and scenes and how people know each other and write to each other and trade tapes and everything, it was all growing at the same time, right? Of course, you see that kind of thing as well. So it is hard to say one band did it all, but I mean, I guess they have the vinyl came out, the album came out in '85, so that predates a lot of stuff. Like even Chuck, I guess what came out 86, 87.
87. Yeah, 87. Yeah.
Yeah, 87 Scream, which is even that when I first heard it, it didn't really blow me away. I didn't hate it, but I didn't, it wasn't like a whole new genre's coming here. Like, it didn't really like blow me away like that until 89 when I heard like, Morbid Angel and, Carcass and Obituary, Slowly We Ride, those albums were just like, okay, here we go. Now this is something's changing here, something's happening.
Something clearly different, yeah.
Yeah,
But
there's
but
that's
yeah, I mean, you're pointing out to, like, the progression, the evolution in a
sure,
sense, and you can't
sure,
really say I mean, I'm a huge Possessed fan and a huge Death fan,
yeah,
and, you get a lot of guys that are arguing about who was first and which is technically death metal and this and that,
right,
and it's like, it doesn't there isn't, like, clear delineation like that, it's like, I mean, if you wanna trace it all back, it all comes from Sabbath, you know what I mean, at some
oh yeah,
point or another, it's just a slow evolution over time where people
yeah, for sure,
grow and take what their influences, what they've heard, and they add something different to it, and then over time, it becomes something different and new.
for sure. Even Jeff from Possessed was saying that Chuck used to come down to the rehearsals. He used to like, always, I think he borrowed a couple of members or something like that, or I think there was like the guys from Sadis and stuff like that, and so there was like it's always like a tight knit thing. So like these people, they all knew each other anyway. They were all liked each other's stuff. So it just the timeline, I guess, when you release something and you're finally able to do something. Like I mean, look, here I am 30 years later from when I started like playing music, and finally I'm able to get back to it again and do it properly. You know what I mean? Like there was a long space in there where I was just like kind of drifting along, and I didn't have the right musicians to back up the style that I really wanted to kind of express myself with. So that's taken a while as well. You know what I mean? Like and it's also a continuing learning process as well. So you just got to go with it.
How would you say your style and, like, sort of taste in music has evolved over time?
Um, 86 would be some of my main influences, especially like for thrash and stuff like that, which later became what we were doing in Overthrow. And it's, but that didn't last long, and I'm still fond of those specific releases. And, like Dark Angels, Darkness Descends, Devastation, Eternal Devastation. I mean, sorry, Destruction with Eternal Devastation. What else came out around that time? Of course, Rain and Blood, Slayer. There's another influential one that came out. There's some, Sodom and stuff like that. A lot of the German, Creator, Pleasure to Kill. Like there was a lot of German thrash. Was like that. I loved it. It was just way more violent than the Bay Area sound, right, at the time. So that's what really influenced me at that time. And then from there, 89, 90 was Morbid Angel, Obituary, getting into the heavier like death metal and grind and blast stuff and everything. So and then it kind of just like sat around there, really, you know what I mean? Like the first four Morbid Angel albums are just that kind of thing. Sadistic Intent, and then there's newer bands like Infernal War, which I love, all their very relentless style. Torture Division with Jorgen and Tobias, and those, like it's almost like a super group, that band, and it just went under the radar. And when I heard that too, like it was like kind of like I should get back into playing really heavy shit again. So,
Nice. Nice. Yeah, there's something about that era of German thrash that is I really enjoy it too, man. There's something about, like, grittier and darker than, like, the American thrash at that time. I don't know what it is about it, but it's more violent and brutal, but there's like a unique sound that came out at that time, like you said, like, with Sodom and Creator and that. There was
yeah,
a few other bands that were coming out of that area at the time, and it's
sure.
it's got its own unique sound. Like you were saying before, it's
Like,
like
all,
even
all,
amongst like death metal or thrash metal or whatever, you can find bands that are like totally different even from one another. So I really enjoy that German thrash.
yeah, for sure. I think that's it. That is one of the things with like specifically the 80s thrash. I guess any era, like every band is kind of just doing their thing. This is what I was saying before. Like it's no two bands really sound the same unless you're like blatantly ripping off another band. But I mean, like if you're writing something and someone else is writing something, it's just not going to sound the same. Just everyone is just way different. Like the way they write and stuff like that. But that kind of stuff, like, yeah, everyone was worshiping the Bay Area sound, and of course, Metallica was getting big, and then everyone started kind of like following that formula and really kind of trying to sell it to radio and sell it to TV. Like, oh, these guys got a tour bus and these guys are doing this and that, and they're on MTV now and this and that. You know what I mean? And then everyone kind of like started pandering to that and softening it up to that because maybe they could happen to them. Maybe they could get a bigger crowd too. And whereas the German thrash scene, I mean, especially in the '80s, I mean, it didn't from album to album, it didn't get like softer. You know what I mean? Like, of course, I guess like in the '90s, which was weird anyway. You know, some bands, a lot of bands actually went soft, but like those German ones, I know some of them went a little different singers and stuff. I think Creator stayed mostly to that kind of style. I kind of lost track of them actually because it was the initial albums that I liked a lot. I think I'm just wandering off here with what I'm talking about at this point.
No, I'm right there with you.
You know what I mean? Like in the '80s, like you know, so like they kind of, you know, it was a lot heavier, more relentless kind of style. It did have a violent kind of style, you know, Pleasure to Kill, you know, as opposed to the Greenhouse Effect or whatever the song's called. You know what I mean? Like it's, you know, I guess social issues or whatever and not, but I mean, you know, As the World Burns is a better title. You know what I mean? Like that's something else going on there. It's just it was a violent, relentless attitude, and I just kind of like that. You know, like it didn't have like it wasn't half-assed. Is basically.
I'm really surprised that it was Metallica or the Big Four that got huge when I would put a bunch of Creator up against any of the Big Four, you know what I mean?
Especially we call it the Big Four of thrash, because which of those Slayer and maybe Megadeth stuff would be the closest to thrash, or the first couple of Metallica albums. I don't ever really considered Anthrax like a thrash band. I don't know. I mean, they're kind of metalish, heavy metal. Like it doesn't sound thrashy to me.
Yeah, it's almost you know what crossover is? It's almost that sort of mix between like I think of Tankard in this same thing where it's like kind of thrashy. It's got a little bit of a hardcore punk influence almost, you know, sort of like some DRI. It's kind of the same kind of vibe.
Yeah, for sure. I get it.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, if you call those the Big Four, I mean, it's odd that Creator isn't on that list, you know, or Sodom, or even I would put
there is a
Thrower up there too, you know.
I have heard of people say, you know, call it the German, the Teutonic Four or whatever. Like there's a, you know, so people do say that, and you know, of course, it's Creator, Destruction, Sodom, and people try to shove Tankard in there. I don't know. I kind of didn't like the jokey aspect of that band, which was a shame because there was some heavy songs on there, for what I recall. I don't know who would be another contender for the big, the German Four, you know what I mean? But of thrash, you know, so, or unless you just say the other four of thrash anyway, because like you were saying, it doesn't have to be relegated to Germany, but that was the style of like, you know, why I like that German kind of style, that German thrash, the '80s stuff.
So like I've noticed
the Damn the Machine, which I just bought from the Noise Record Story, which deals with all that stuff, which I saw that. Yeah. I'm interested in that because it's all, you know, I want to know where everything went wrong. Like, because near the end of the '80s, that's when the bands kind of started to change a little bit. Like, look at Into the Pandemonium from Celtic Frost, and even Release from Agony from Destruction was a little like, okay, we're going to get really technical on this. And, but the production didn't serve, you know, the style, you know, at the time. And even Sodom, I think they kind of went more to that mid-pace, like Agent Orange, a little bit more mid-paced, that Motorhead kind of style, you know, which is cool. But I mean, I really like the fast stuff, like Persecution Mania, you know, Christ Passion and stuff like that. And, you know, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. No, I agree with what you said. I mean, I like that album, but it was definitely different. Or I loved Agent Orange, but that was definitely a different feel, you know. And thrash definitely took a huge dip in the 90s, and I don't know why that is. Maybe it was just grunge. I have no idea.
Yeah, I guess I think a lot of people were trying to push metal into places where it didn't belong, like you know, commercial aspect of it and videos, and like, you know, it's never been about that, you know what I mean? And metal bands didn't make videos. So I guess they did in the '80s at some point. I was going to say they didn't back then, but I guess some did. like I was saying before, it's an ugly style. It's an abrasive style. It's not supposed to be in there. So I think when people started seeing bands doing better, and then some bands were getting pushed, even like the really really heavy ones, like extreme metal stuff, because there was a lot of labels that were close to these, MTV and Much Music and everything, so they could push all these things. The terminology also changed in the 90s. It went from heavy metal to here's the hard music charts. Here's the loud charts. Like at the end of the 90s, it went really away from just calling anything metal. Like it was a taboo word in the 90s, and a lot of it got pushed back underground. But a lot of the bands really kind of sold out and tried to accommodate this new, let's make some money and like let's sell out our style. It's a little unfortunate. I think I had another point in there, but I kind of lost it. So,
Well, I think we're seeing. I've noticed a huge resurgence of like.
thing.
What's that?
You're talking about it was the grunge that probably killed it, and that was part of it too, because also a little bit before grunge, if you remember the Red Hot Chili Peppers and a few other bands like that breaking through, there was a lot of bands that wanted to incorporate funky style into the metal, and that happened at the end of the 90s too. Like Faith No More would have been another one of those bands that they weren't funky, but they had some kind of stuff like that in their background, and everybody wanted to kind of change their style a little bit in the late 80s, early 90s, and then that's when grunge came in too, and grunge kind of had that kind of just fuck you attitude about everything, but they didn't. It seemed a bit more lip service about the whole thing, because they were getting on the radio and they were getting tours, and it's just like, what are you guys mad about? Like,
right, your life is good. Yeah.
It's like that teenage angst, the kind of thing they were all taking advantage of. It was kind of a weird time, yeah, but it did, it changed the metal scene for sure for some reason, which was weird. But of course, the faithfuls are still there, and go plugging their way through it.
Yeah, and then we had the new metal stuff in the late 90s there for a little while. But
I mean, another extension of that. That's almost like an extension of the grunge, with just making it like an alternative music, just making it heavier, but still having these sing along choruses and stuff like that, and singing words. And it's just like it's like pop shrouded with distortion, like, and it's just like, just because you have distortion on a guitar doesn't make it metal. I don't know.
Right. Well, I will say I sometime in like the mid 2000s, there's till about now, there's been a big resurgence of like just metal all across the board, but like newer bands that are playing sort of old school thrash, like Warbringer comes to mind. I'm a big Warbringer fan, and to me that sounds like just like straight, it is got a bit of a newer sound, but there's something that's very old school thrash, very brutal, very fast, and I don't know, I've been digging the whatever we lost in the 90s, we're making up for now in some sense. And I think part of that is just the internet helps. It helps a lot of like, bands that you don't have to make, you don't have to make it to MTV to make it now. You can just put your, make yourself a video. You can be an underground band and make a video on YouTube, and, people will listen to your stuff and then find your album and whatever else, so it's a good time for music all around, I think. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's some people are always down on social media and the internet and stuff like that. And it's like, if I didn't have access to this, none of this would have happened. Like, I mean, or it would have happened, but like a lot slower and not with 100% of who I wanted to be in the band, for example, or whatever. But because it is what it is. Like, I mean, every aspect of it has been through social media, through the internet, like of the beginning of this band, finding artists, finding studios, finding manufacturers, shirts, CDs, you name it, getting shows, finding other bands. Like, I've been like in contact with so many bands and just trying to reach out, and because I have another band as well, Nihilist Death Cult, and I do we've been playing shows and just like and just finding bands, and we're getting invites to all these other places now. We're going to Buffalo and Detroit, and we got an Ottawa show this weekend. And so it's good to get out of the city too. Like, we're playing in Toronto all the time. So now it's, getting out there, and that all happened through social media, like, just contacting everyone and connecting with everyone, networking. I've always been uh, an important aspect to what you do, especially as an independent DIY kind of band. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not doing that kind of stuff, what are you doing? Like, I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's all right in front of you, you know. And so, I don't know. I just have to take advantage of it, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, great time for music and great time to be a musician, especially a smaller band or a DIY kind of band. It's I'm digging it, man. I hear new bands all the time. It's good because you'll never get bored of what it's listening to what you've been listening to for the past 30 years. There's always something new.
Yeah, I
Which
totally feel
is
the same way. Like, I don't think the scene is lacking in any way. I don't think, like, even though you said, like, there's a lot of bands that are returning to an older style, even when you hear them, like, they don't sound like an old band. They're like throwing their twist on it because they're younger and they have their interpretation of it, but they still stick to the framework of that style, which is the important part of it, right? And so it has that style where you're like, oh, that sounds like this, but it's not, right? It's like has a newer thing. Like, we have a band Corrosive that we just played with, and they played that older style, like thrash style, that really, but it's heavy and fast, and they're really fun to play with. So I think that, but that's just one example. I mean, there's like a lot of other kind of, even within the death metal stuff and everything, like when they're returning into, like, people are like, oh, we're like, what I'm doing is Morbid Angel, Possessed, Sadistic Intent, all that kind of stuff. There's some newer influences like Behemoth and Torture Division, which I mentioned, and that kind of stuff. So it's there's always a twist you're going to hear on it, like, hopefully, you know what I mean? So, like, I kind of like to keep the stuff fresh, and I think it's probably the best it's ever been. Like, the scene, I think right now, it's like it's got into commercial areas, and people like some of these bands because they're more melodic and stuff like that, which is still like that's a bit foreign thing to me, like the melodic stuff and the symphonic stuff. I know they have huge audiences or whatever. It's just not my thing, really. But yeah, I mean, I think there's something for everybody out there as well at this point in time. There's no shortage of bands whatsoever. You know.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I really love the sort of progressive death metal kind of stuff, and maybe because I grew up listening to a lot of old progressive rock bands and stuff. That's what my folks were into.
Sure.
So,
Makes sense.
stuff like Opeth or Gojira, big fan, and it's not for everybody. It took me a while to come
Yeah.
around to that sort of I don't know, some clean vocals in that mixed in there, and
Yeah.
some melodic stuff. I don't get into like the symphonic stuff too much, but it took me a long time to come around. For a long time I was just like, no, it's not brutal enough. It's not brutal enough. But after a while, it started to grow on me. Death had some of that influence in
Yeah.
it, even in some of the later albums. Like a little bit
Well,
of
yeah.
progressive metal.
Yeah. So even if you trace that, that's actually one of the best examples of how prog infiltrated death, which would be like, I think it started almost with like this whole Cynic death kind of thing, and like, well, Cynic was already on that path, and then when the more they worked with Chuck, obviously it rubbed off on him, and and there was some help going on there with his writing. I'm not saying just like in the style of being more progressive and more thinking more away from what he had done in the past. Chuck, that is his writing, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, he's just a human, and it's already musically kind of almost years ahead of like Spiritual Healing, because it is a different band, and they do take it to a different place, and and I did like that a lot at the time. I don't know if it's like this is gonna upset a lot of people. I don't know if it's like a pure death metal album, but then I listened to it, and it's like it is pretty death metal, pretty much every part of it. So there's no you can't say it's not a death metal album. But after that, he kind of did lose me, and we did get a little too progressive, and the songwriting was choppier, and it didn't appeal to me at all. And the vocals also went higher, and all the lyrics changed, and it was just like, I didn't get into the later stuff. I think I have to stop at Human for the Chuck worship there.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, fair enough. That's the one thing about metal fans is like, there's, for every metal fan, there's an entirely unique taste. You know what I mean? So it's like, we're all metalheads, but even we all have different tastes within metal. Like I've got a buddy who's super into metal, but he likes like early 80s speed metal, and that's not necessarily like my thing, or some hair metal kind of stuff, and that's not necessarily my thing either. But
For
we
sure.
can both we're both metalheads, and we can both talk about metal, it's
Yeah.
or music in general. It doesn't really matter. There's a 100,000 bands out there, you know what I mean? Like you're not gonna like all of them, and you're gonna like some that I don't, and vice versa, and whatever, and it's all fine,
Yeah, for sure. It's very biased, and like it's one of the most, like when you hear vocals of any genre, that's usually the very specific, and like it's almost like your ear dictates it to you if you like it or not. You know what I mean? Like some things hit your ear and they're perfect, and some things hit your ear and it's just noise, and it's totally different for somebody else. You might be like, this guy's the best vocalist, and someone else will just be like, no, like it doesn't have the same taste, or to comprehend that or whatever. So it's like it's very subjective, all of that stuff. So it's just like like I mean, there are music that I hate and stuff like that, and that's why I don't get people don't like certain things that I like. I don't get bent out of shape, because it's like I know we don't all like the same music or bands, or there's so much out there that how can you all like the same stuff? We don't even like the same foods, and this and other things, TV shows or whatever. How are you going to like the same music, which is a way more personal experience, I believe.
I mean, to me, that's kind of like the beautiful thing about humanity, right? And I go back and forth. Like some days I'm like, no, just nuke the planet from space, and all of life on the planet. Just humanity's done and over with. But some days I'm like, wow, no, like humanity can be very beautiful in the sense that like we're all unique individuals with our own subjective preferences and creations,
For
and
sure.
things we're interested in, things we can build and do, and and that's kind of what a lot of cool stuff comes out of that, like uniqueness, right? And including music, including metal, and yeah, I think you kind of see a pinnacle of that within metal music, in the sense that it's very individualistic in a
Right.
sense.
Right. Yeah, individualistic is in tastes, but I think on a whole, like the like you were talking about before, the camaraderie. I think it's like there's more of a community too in metal too. Like, as even though there are a lot of genres and stuff like that, I think it adds the same ways like it does in a society. Like everyone's doing something different, and it all like makes a society. So I think like it's almost like the same way with music too. Like all these bands are just different, contributing different things and ideas, and that makes a whole scene.
Right. It's almost like a community of like unique weirdos, right? We're into their own
Oh,
shit,
exactly.
like
Yeah.
right.
We're definitely like the rebels and the weirdos, the outsiders, right? For metal, right? And we congregate together, and what we're listening to, what we're making, the community is beautiful to us, right? So I mean, it's not for everyone, and that's fine too, because it's not made for everyone. This kind of style of music, you know.
So something I've been kind of getting into in my older years is well, I mentioned the prog death stuff, but there's certain bands that, and I don't know if I like them because of this or what, but there's a lot of bands I end up listening to that you really can't pin down. Like
Okay,
like I'll give you like Goat Whore. I love
okay,
fucking Goat Whore, and I've seen them a bunch, but I don't think you could pin down Goat Whore in any specific genre. They've
right,
got some really thrashy stuff. They got some
yeah,
straight up death. They've got some old school like blackened stuff, like man,
no,
just that something about that mix of like you can tell they've been metalheads their whole life, and they've listened to all
right,
kinds of stuff, right? And it
very
all
true.
kind of blends together into this weird like new thing. Is there any bands that are like that for you
Um,
that you can't really nail down, or
but I would consider just the finish your idea there, your thought there, like to say like about Goatwhore. I would consider them a death metal band, but yeah, I do agree with you. They do have a lot of thrashy and like black elements as well. Definitely a lot of thrashy stuff for sure. But they're pretty enjoyable. I think at the first time, a couple of times I saw them, for some reason, it just kind of went over my head. Really, I was just like, it sounded all the same. But then I understood it, and then it clicked. I was just like, oh, then I really liked watching them, like so, which was strange because I mean, that's the style that I want to do, the relentless style or whatever. But it just sounded all samey at one point, but really early on. But that's just, I think I was just not in the right headspace for that, because also there was times when you're listening to other kind of stuff too, and that kind of influences you a little bit. And there's a lot of metal stuff that I listen to all the time. Infernal War is actually one of those bands that I would say, like, are they a death metal band? Are they a grind band? There's not too many bands that I don't know what kind of genre they fall into, but I know what you mean. Like, I think there's also, like I was saying, how now that I've incorporated my thrashy influence as well as my black metal influences within the death metal framework. So I mean, you just take the good parts that you want, and you invent your creations, your art, right? And this is what I came up with. That's what they come up with, and are the bands becoming indefinable? I think it's all under the same death metal thing, and people call us blackened death metal and that kind of stuff. So I don't have any problems with any of those tags. I mean, it's all within that framework of what we do. So as long as they enjoy it, I'm happy.
Right, and I think that's what I was saying about your music earlier. It's and maybe that's why I really dig it. Is it's sure it's death metal, but you can definitely hear something unique and lots of influences from sort of other styles of metal too. You can hear it in there, and I can almost catch a little bit of a deathcore feel too occasionally on certain like breakdowns and songs. But yeah, no, I really dig it, and there's I could name a bunch of bands that you could definitely call them death metal, but there's a lot of other like kind of weird influence that it makes it
maybe just more
unique, right?
I'm just more on the spot right now, and I can't think of any bands. But if there's some other bands you want to throw out there, we could.
Well, have you ever heard a band called? It's pronounced sludge, but it's pronounced it's spelled SLUGDGE, and it's a lot of like weird, like they have a lot of like slug references in their music.
Right.
It's kind of, you could call it technical death metal, but there's definitely some like weird prog influence, and there's definitely like there's some songs that with a lot of grindcore influence to them.
Right.
And there's even some melodic stuff in it, and it's like all very, very technical stuff, and a lot of weird timings, and there's a lot of like weird sci-fi
like a lot of that,
lyrics.
It seems like a lot of that stuff goes hand in hand, like the weird timings and the prog and the technical. It all seems like it's all geared towards the same kind of thing. It's like I don't want to say showing off, but I mean, it definitely has like it's more thought out, where it's they're trying to express something with the music, right? Like so I think like a lot of those elements, they go hand in hand. Even like some of the grind parts would probably fit in there, but that's not a normal aspect of like prog, I don't think. But I know what you're saying, like just mixing styles together. But you know what I mean, like the same ways you would take like death metal and like be relentless and uncompromising and like fast double kick all the time and blasts, and those are normal things that all fit together,
Right, for sure. Yeah, and something I've been trying to put into words is like, just because it's technical doesn't mean it's good, or doesn't mean it sounds good. Like something might be really crazy and hard to play and a weird timing, and it doesn't fit. It doesn't sound good.
Right.
So
Yeah,
for me, like I like technical death metal, but it's got to also sound good. You know what I mean? I got to be able to bang my head to it, like there's got to be something that sounds that reaches me, that it can't just be really good musically, right?
Right. And even that is also, like we were saying, like it's subjective as well. Like, I mean, what is good? I mean, there's a lot of things that I could name that I don't think anyone would like at all. But I mean, there's stuff where you kind of like, just like, this is the thing that I've never liked about technical stuff, is like some people try to be overly technical to prove the point that they could play or something or write or whatever, and it's just like, or that it's just so technical that other people can't play it. I don't really know the mentality behind that, because it's never been my goal. When I write riffs, I want it to be memorable. I want it to be like big. I want it to be like hummable. These types of things, and and depending on if it's like an intro riff or a verse riff or a chorus riff, it has to have certain things that I'm looking for. And technicality has never been one of the things that I've relied on or really focused on, because that's not what makes a song. That's not, you know what I mean? Like, that's only it's like an idea of doing more than what is necessary, almost. Like, I don't know if that makes sense or if that's really nails it or whatever, but it is in the way I write. That's why I was saying about like trim the fat and just trim all these ideas out, because it's like they're not necessary to me, in my opinion.
No, and I get that. I mean, even though I'm a bit of a fan of the technical stuff, it's like it's like I said,
really proper and right. I mean, I'm not saying like I hate it all. I'm just saying like most of it to me seems very ego oriented, like that. And
sure, yeah.
That's not what I'm trying to do with this at all. Like, like this, but of course it's everyone has their own idea of why they're doing what they're doing. So like I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just not my thing. Like sometimes like that,
right.
I do like some of that stuff, like I was saying.
Right. But there's some that I'm just not into. I'm like, okay, this is probably very hard to play, but I just don't dig it. It just doesn't have whatever I'm looking for. There's something missing here. It doesn't really grab me. It's not, I don't know, it's not brutal enough or whatever the thing is. I just can't get into.
Exactly.
But my taste, I do end up listening to a lot of the sort of tech stuff, but it's not because it's like, oh my God, it's so hard to play. It's just, it sounds good to me, so.
Right.
And that's what it really comes down to.
Like a couple of, I can't remember, like last week or something, I posted, just because it's old school doesn't mean it's good. I post a lot of crazy, stupid things like that all the time, right? And just like see what people say. But it's also like, it's true though, because just because you have a label on it doesn't make it good. I mean, there's so many old school bands because everything is old school, like, because it's in the past, right? So there's so many bands, and there's like millions of bands you've never heard of, and it's just like they've done a demo, and people are like, oh yeah, remember this demo from the 87 from this band that did nothing? It was like, nope, I don't remember that, never heard of them. So it's like, why even? Like, I mean, if there's a reason why you haven't heard from it for 35 years, so
yeah, that reminds me of back in the day when we were passing mixtapes around, right? And it's like, oh, it's this band that you've never heard of, and like you listen to it, and it sounds like a kid recorded it through a tape recorder in a toilet. It's like you can't, you can barely understand it. It's so distorted, you just can't hear anything. It's like, this just sounds awful, But when we're young, that was the way you were introduced to like new bands, or like bands that were well known, didn't have a label yet. They were big on local scenes, but nobody had heard of them. But
I remember,
the recordings were awful though.
Yeah, that was one of those things. Like also in the 80s, it was hard to find people to record bands like that. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, I think studios were a bit more like professional at the time, like if you're going to come in here, you got to do it like this, and you have to spend like a week's worth of, or whatever. Like, I don't think they wanted to do things in one day there or 2 days, like the death metal budget at the time. Right. And even nobody knew what to do. Like, I mean, just some of those early albums, like the first Bolthrower you mentioned, the first Carcass, some of these other albums, like they're leave a little bit to be desired, on the sound quality side of things, but that was the beginning of a whole new movement, which a lot of people didn't understand, like blast beats. No one understood what that was, and thank God for blast beats. All I got to say,
Yeah, for real. Hey, so back to the and maybe politics is a wrong word. We're not into politics here either. Right. We're in some sense like anti-politics, but what I meant by politics is like, what do you think, like what are your thoughts about like the state of the world or society, or how things are progressing for humanity. Like, do you have any thoughts on, or what is,
using
you
the word.
mentioned nihilism. I'm a philosophical nihilist, like I'm very, very much into, I read a lot of nihilist thinkers and that.
Yeah.
Like, what are your, like, do you have any, like,
Yeah, of course. I mean,
thoughts about, like, life and this, state of the world and humanity,
well, I mean, like, well, I live in Canada, so
Sure.
we got that Trudeau guy, and this I'm not happy about that. This guy's running the country into the ground, but he's also like a puppet anyway. I mean, like, he's not as smart enough to do anything. This guy, like this, if we're talking about like all the, I guess the globalization that is coming up, like everyone's talking about that, and like some of these things, they sound like they're coming as what people who don't understand it, they call them conspiracies, but everything that's been talked about is actually happening now. So I don't see why they're still called conspiracies. Like, I remember a couple of years ago they were talking about the 15-minute cities, and if you tried to point that out to anyone, and everyone just like looked at you like you're a weirdo. Now that's a thing that's actually happening right now. They're talking about the 15-minute cities, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah. I saw a meme that said, we're going to stop calling them conspiracy theories and just start calling them spoiler alerts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Pretty much. And like, you talk about like George Soros, or Klaus Schwab, and a lot of people just look at, oh yeah, where did you get that from, your YouTube there? And it's just like, well, these are actually people talking in front of our leaders, telling them what the world is going to be like in the next, from now on, as soon as they implement everything, and they're talking to all these people, and it's on tape. We're not making it up. I'm not, like, I actually see these people talking and saying their plan. It's not, there's no hidden things at this point in time. Everything is out in the open.
That's what I always say. That's exactly what I always say. It's like, there's very little that's actually hidden. And if it's hidden, it is. If it is hidden, then it's hidden. It's just like, I got tautology, I know, but like, you don't know it. But yeah, I think a lot of this comes from exactly that. Like, I hear even pretty mainstream, very mainstream, normal people on the AM radio when I overhear that and whatnot.
Yeah.
But just very mainstream people even talking about that stuff of certain political persuasions, or if you don't have one at all, that where it's just nothing stopping you, but it's pretty out in the open. And I think sometimes it's like if you like mix hot water and really hot water and really cold water, you get a little bit of like a steam explosion. It's like when this really high level, behind closed doors kind of, it's not secret, like you said, but it meets the public, the masses, just the everyday average Joe people. And it mixes so poorly, and it mixes into this thing that people call conspiracy theories. But I mean, exactly. And we don't know every detail of it, but that's
right.
what I think it is. It's like you put boiling water and you throw it out into an ice bath, it'll have a little bit of a reaction.
For sure. I think it seems like from any side, I don't think anybody really wants change, a lot of change. And I think we're being pushed into change by some kind of false flag type things like, climate crisis and stuff like that. And it's just like, so a lot of these things that are just kind of trying to change what's been happening up until now. And not everybody's happy about it. And not everybody wants that to happen. Because I'm not saying there is no climate crisis, but
it's above my pay grade.
Like, it doesn't seem like, I mean, like, okay, like North America, for example, we've been targeted about this kind of stuff, pollution, for as far back as I can remember, and we have some of the strictest guidelines. And I don't know why there needs to be even more work done there when certain other countries are left to just do whatever they want and just are way worse contributors to pollution.
Oh yeah, it's wild. It's the more economic growth, the cleaner the country's economy gets, and they want to stop economic growth, which is mind-boggling. Yeah, but I mean, I'm glad you see it, and it's just a matter of, we're every day, even though we have a podcast and we do we kind of argue back, going back and forth, I guess, whether it's politics or not. But we have a podcast. But even us, it's like, we know all this is above our pay grade. We can only speculate.
Yeah,
We're
and I
average
think
people, just like all your listeners and everyone else who doesn't have a political or maybe not political podcast.
right. Also, I think like a lot of these social issues that people care about have been hijacked by politicians. So it turns into this like it's a platform for them, but it's a type of platform that they can't fix because then they won't have anything to run on. That type of thing, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I think
the way I
you're.
see it,
Go ahead.
the way I just want to say real quick, the way I see it, the politicians or whoever else, demagogues, whatever, need an audience. So there's always takes
Yeah.
two to tango.
Yeah, for sure. So like they need, these issues that people care about to bring them in, to vote for them. And that's why they never get fixed. Like, I mean, we have Trudeau. He's always talking about indigenous people and like everything and like, standing up for them and everything. But they've been complaining about not having any clean water for his whole term, like ever since he's gotten in. So, and he said he was going to do something about it. He hasn't. It's been like what, 9 years or something like that, 10 years. He hasn't done anything. So, I mean, there's no more clearer sign than that. It's just like, well, why aren't you doing something? Isn't that what you ran on? Like, isn't clean drinking water something everyone should have?
Yeah, I mean, the government's never going to fix any of these things because it's not in their interest to do so for the reasons you just mentioned. You know, if they fixed it, they'd make themselves obsolete. You know what I mean? So they can't do that, and they're not going to get reelected. You know, they need to get elected on. We need to fix these things. Like, I care about the environment, and I'm a bit of a nature lover to some extent. But to me, this whole like World Economic Forum and Agenda 2030, to me, this is taking like things that people, like you said, that people care about, and just using it almost as using problems as a tool of control over people's lives. So you're going to give these billionaires and these international institutions a bunch of power and money to quote unquote try fix these things.
Sure.
And it just pulls at your heartstrings, so you go along with it, right?
Sure, and you contribute money because that's going to help, right? And then all the money goes to all their friends who are helping them do their thing, and then and they pay for their buddies to make commercials of themselves, and it's all, they just feed themselves with the money that comes in, and and they just keep themselves going. Like they don't care about anything else than that.
No, I don't think they care about you, me, anything like that. It's money and power for these people.
Right. Maybe it starts out like that when they first get into politics or something, but it doesn't end like that when they get elected. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's possibly. And Nikki, you're for one of our guests, like, we're doing something a little different. You're not a guy with like their own, quote unquote political podcast or like a blog or any other thing. So it's kind of interesting to take a look at that. I think this is not true for everybody, but I think a good portion of people, and obviously there's major splits in our society that we can't even exactly come with an exact word for. So we use things like right and left and whatever. But there's a lot of people, I think, that when they see their lives that they live on like us on a local level, on a county, in their neighborhood, and they're going to school, going to in the community. And a lot of people basically do work in the community. Some people do the commute thing and whatever. But like when they see that and they see people meeting in Davos or wherever else, or the G7 or whatever, but especially the WF, that's a really, they see all these powerful people, all of which are basically billionaires or heads of state or heads of all these kind of international or even sometimes supranational bodies and everything, kind of trying to manage things. It immediately kind of, it just conflicts. And maybe we're just all, not smart enough to realize their genius. But I think there's something, I think as someone, I consider myself a populist, I think there's something there,
Right. Actually, another point I did want to make about what we were saying before, how the social issues got hijacked by politicians. What I was saying, another flip to that is that a lot of people don't want to accept the truth of what's going to happen or what's happening, or like it's above their mentality of what the comfort zone that they've made for themselves through life, and like of following the rules. You know what I mean? Like there's you know, you were taught to go to school, you learn your thing, you get that job that you studied for, you know, and everything just falls into place. And to take that away, to tell them like the government's not on their side, you know, they don't want to believe that, right? And they don't want to know that. You know, truth is ugly. I mean, it's like, but it has to be out there to move forward, I think, you know?
Yeah, it's one of two things, right? It's hard for them to accept because everything they've been taught their entire lives contradicts that. Or it's just like for most people, they're just trying to put food on the table, right? Or just
That's the
go.
main, that's the most of it right there. Everyone's just trying to get by, you know, just relentless with taxes and like more this and that, and like causes and money. And like, it's like nobody ever gets ahead, it seems like. And I think that's one of the real problems these days. Everyone's getting upset about that because it's just endless with taxes, you know, and other stuff. Is what the
Yeah.
fuck's going on with that? You know, like you get
Taxes and cost of living and, everything costs more and you're working harder than we ever had before and you hardly see your kids already. You don't have time to like think about Davos, or whatever the thing is, right?
Yeah. It's the same thing you were just saying. It's above the pay grade, but it's above your real, like, what you could even do about it.
I mean, whether it's planned or not, we live in, you can't just take a month or to fuck off or just,
right. Yeah.
You go do your thing for a while. And that's something that historically, like forever, people were able to do, or do a part-time job and start a band. You know what I mean? That's not a thing. You're either week to week or month to month now, no matter who you are, even people that are living comfortably. Honestly,
if I didn't have music, I mean, like, I don't know why would keep me happy. You know what I mean? Like just going to work and watching TV wouldn't cut it. That's for sure. So it's like one of those, you're like, vacations is, some people don't think about that kind of stuff, but you need that kind of respite from your, just like the grind, just to clear your mind and just like, relax. We can't work every day, every year, like just bam, bam, bam. You know what I mean? That's going to take its toll mentally and physically and everything. Right. So I know we need the money though. That's why everyone stays like, no, I can't go on vacation. I need the money. I got to work. It's like,
well, I think one thing that I would say, okay, so it used to be that it was the American dream, right?
Right.
And you put
probably
your
the Canadian
years,
one too.
There's probably the same thing for Canada, but you put your 40 years in at the plant or whatever the thing, and you could get your retirement. And there was a time when like you could live well off of like one income, and you had your house and your vacations, and so like in a sense you like sold your soul for like material comforts, like you put I don't mean that like quite literally, but like you did the grind and so your family would be well taken care of. Well, now you're just grinding just to get by. You're not even getting ahead anymore. Like maybe this was back in I don't know 40s, 50s, or 60s. You could live pretty comfortably if you just put the your nose to the grindstone or something. You just ground it out and you got yourself a fat retirement and a house and a car in the garage, and then you could do the things that you actually enjoyed. Now you don't even have that option. You know what I mean? Like there is no like golden parachute. There's no light. You're just grinding to get by. So I think this is you don't even have the material comforts of the American dream. And I think everybody realizes that dream is like long dead. Right. True. The plus side of that though, is I think a lot of people are looking towards alternative lifestyles and alternative sources of income. And hey, maybe sitting in a fucking cubicle, 40 hours a week under fluorescent tubes is not for me. So you're having a lot of people like thinking about different ways of living or different ways of making money or pursuing their dreams or starting a fucking band or, you can become a YouTube musician now, you know what I mean? And make like decent money, so, or whatever you're into, so I think that is, if I have to look at the optimistic side, like that's it, like, because this economy is like crushing people, it's actually causing a lot of people to rethink their priorities and their lifestyles, right?
Right. One thing you mentioned there were about like how it used to be like the man goes to work and he provides, and then that was enough. And then I don't know exactly when it happened, but the whole, I guess it was under the guise, it seems like, of the feminist movement, like for the women, like, oh, go and you should have a career too. And that seems more of a ploy going back to taxing again. Like it was like now you have tax coming from two places within one family now. Before it was only one. So now two people are contributing to taxes now multiply that by the whole country. So now the other half that you were getting taxes from, you're getting taxes from them too now. So it's just like one of those things. It's just like it was under the guise of like empowering yourself, which it does have that element. Capitalism, of course, you work, you make the money, and then you can do things. But like with the amount of taxes and the amount of everything that's going on, it just doesn't seem possible anymore. Like it's like a joke almost. It's like, here, can you guys, they're throwing out the life preserver, but only giving you a little bit at a time. It's like, here you go.
Well, I'm sure it was great for GDP, but I'm not sure it's good for like family and individual, liberty and comfort, which is, I think, and flourishing, which is, I think, what we
Sure.
want.
I think that
I mean,
also,
there's unpaid labor is still very important labor, the labor of a mother, or just
right.
I mean, you can't even imagine because you can't plan what's unplannable.
And now people can barely survive on 2 incomes, so something went wrong,
Yeah, exactly, right. So now you do have the 2 incomes and still can't make ends meet. So it doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Well, we should probably start kind of wrapping this up. Man, this was a blast. I'm really glad to have you on, and I'd love to have you on again. And if you guys are playing in East Tennessee, let me know. I'll come out and see you.
Hopefully, eventually, yeah. Hopefully.
yeah. Either Tribe or Nihilist Death Cult. I'll come see you guys too. But
awesome.
you wanna plug anything before we wrap up, or add anything? Any thoughts? Closing thoughts?
No, I had a lot of fun. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate that. Having me on here and expressing my thoughts and opinions. Maybe not everybody wants to hear them, but that's about it. Like you guys already pretty much plugged the music. Tribe of Pazuzu and Nihilist Death Cult. That's like the stuff that I got going on, and it's going to be a lot more of it coming up. Just no end in sight so far.
And sorry, it's slipping my mind. What's the name of your new album that's just coming out?
Blasphemous Prophecies.
There it is. Yeah. It was a cool name. All right, thanks, dude. It's this was a blast. Thanks for coming on again, and
I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, anytime. We'll have you back on again if you want. And
sure, anytime.
Everybody check out their new album. I've been really digging it. If there's any metalheads in the audience, I would recommend taking a listen. But Nick, peace, man. It's been good talking to you.
Peace, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Take care.
Later.
Ciao.